Own a Picasso for 18 grand. DJs as the new watch ambassadors. Mille reveals a $1 million tourbillon. And does the watch community do more harm than good doing fake watch reviews? Welcome to Casual Watch Talk. You're joined by Sam and Kris. How have you been, Kris?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. A little overcast here. We always touch on the weather a little bit, but it's getting warmer. It's getting nice out, and we're breaking through the end of pandemic days are upon us. So that's a fantastic place to be. Getting back to normal here.
Well, should we kick it off with watch obsessions? Have you had a watch obsession this week?
I'm gonna say no. Other than I'm still waiting for my Citizen to show up.
Oh,
and
really?
then it looks like I got usurped over on the Facebook group. One of our members in Europe picked one up, and so I guess I'm an influencer now, Sam. I guess that's So if anybody picked, so Citizen, if you're watching, listening, you can make the check out to cash. Still waiting for that one to show up, and was kind of looking at some of the other watches. There is a blue Sinn, but they offered it in a blue dial.
Yeah,
that looks so similar to the Citizen. It's it's kind of like. But yeah, a little more expensive. So probably about $1,700 more. So,
well, I thought I was going to do my Veya here, my Veya Tropical, as the watch obsessions, because I put it on that Apocalypse Now, the rubber strap from Cheapest NATO's. They did a really good job of it. It looks awesome, especially on this Veya. I think for a thin diver, unfortunately, they're completely sold out now. So there's no 20 mil on the website. Yeah.
Speaking of influencing.
I know. I should have bought a few, but honestly, to be fair, I've had hit or miss with Cheapest NATO's, but I think they've upped their game, certainly. I mean, if this strap is anything to go by. But again, from the Facebook group today, learning all about the Sinn 403, which is a quartz watch, which I had no idea about. Kris, have you seen this Sinn?
Yeah. I just know it as the Sinn UX.
A member had it on the Facebook group, the one that was for believe it's for a specialized part of the German police. Apparently you can have their logo on the dial, but I had no idea about this. I never associated Sinn with quartz. I feel like I've been living under a Sinn related rock.
Yeah, no, this is a very famous. That's kind of surprising. This is a very sort of a watch nerd famous watch. The quartz movement in it had to be strengthened. So I think we talked about this on the episode where we talked about those guys that like oil filled one of the Casios, the quartz.
And the battery runs out in like 3 months.
Yeah, exactly. The battery just like can't handle it. So in this watch, Sinn did the engineering to get a stronger, second movement in it, quartz movement in it to overcome it. But what's cool is it does this little as it ticks, it does this little bounce back. So it's like tick, and then it bounces back, and it's like known. Watch guys call it the UX bounce. So just a little, kind of cool movement thing. But yeah, oil-filled technology. It's cool.
Yeah, and then before I finish, I think I've got to get one of these Sinns. I'm going to stalk it because I'm really getting into my high-precision quartz movements. But before we leave Watch Obsessions and I do a mini little Rolex update, I guess. But before we do that, I want to give a shout-out to, I've reviewed them on the channel before, and that is, they were called... We called them Reese. Like the reviewers that got the early ones called them Reese, but it was actually pronounced Razor. So they've changed their name now to be more like Razor. So it's RZE. And they sent me this little like newspaper here of the Razor. But they also sent me this T-shirt. So I don't know if you can see this, Kris. It's got the Razor logo here, and the back is really cool. I'll throw up a picture of the back. A big thanks to Travis over there. He's he's a great guy. I email him all the time. We've got another watch coming in, and he did send me one a while ago. It had to go on to another review, and I didn't have time to review it. I'll throw up some pictures here. So I had to make some apologies, but there is a new one incoming. It's got the VK64 in it, so I gave him a little bit of a cheeky hard time about that, but I'm looking forward to reviewing the watch. But anyway, so shall we do another little Rolex update for this week? The only update I've got this week, which isn't really an update, I've been chatting to Justin at the Rolex AD, and he's going to come on the channel. So hopefully next week we will have him on the channel. If anybody's got any questions that they've been dying to ask a Rolex AD, proper ones that he's going to answer, don't obviously...
don't sandbag the guy, right?
Yeah, obviously don't ask him things like, where are all the Rolex Submariners? Because he's not going to answer that. But if you've got any questions, let us know over on the Facebook group. Well, before we dive into the news, should we do another thrilling episode of Hit or Miss?
Yes. I didn't see your graphic last time. Have we sticking with the cat?
Yes. I think the cat's now. I've done it twice and I can't find the baseball player hitting the ball, but there's like no royalty-free image. If any of the viewers want to send in an image of them dressed as a baseball player to hit that they don't mind me using on YouTube, or people just might like the cat. The cat could be a thing. We name the cat. Send us a name for the cat.
The cat is part of the hit or miss. Yeah.
Anyway, so let's dive into, and today for your deliberation, Kris, I present to you the easily named Casio GMWB 5000TR-9.
Oh, the Juwagubamaturn 9. Oh, yeah, the Juwagubamaturn. Yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
This is, of course, a special edition, and it's titanium case or a titanium alloy, but this comes in is multicolored special edition, and it is the princely sum of $1,700.
I'd like to ring in immediately. This is a miss.
You can't go that early.
To the back picture, and that bracelet came up. Oh my, that Harlequin bracelet where they like nobody wanted the red one, the gray one, or the gold one, so they're like, we can get rid of these quick. And make money doing it. Oh, I knew. I'm gonna say miss. I don't know. I'm not for me.
I'm tending to agree with you. And in fact, what I think, I dare.
You should go for it.
It's got to be a miss for me as well. And dare I say that I think this is controversial. I think that entire line of metal G-Shock, the DW6900s in the metal cases, is a miss from a pricing standpoint. They start, even the basic silver one is $550, and I cannot work out why it's that much, because you can literally go on AliExpress, buy a metal. It's not as well finished. We know it's a knockoff. I'm sure it's not as well finished, but the raw materials are similar. Yeah, the metal one has Bluetooth, I think, but that module you can get for about $140 plus so for about $200 with the metal case, you're all in. I think that Casio should be closer to $300, $350. I think $550 is a stretch. And the gold one at $600 and the rose gold.
The limited editions in the 500s? Okay. But yeah, you're right. When the aftermarket parts are cheaper than the car or the watch, you know what I mean? Like the thing that you're buying. When the aftermarket parts are so incredibly cheaper, you're like, why would I, why would I get this with the thing? Like the sum of its parts kind of thinking. And yeah, I totally agree. Like if it's, I think they've missed with that price point, but also seems like they're selling them. So maybe we're totally wrong. And I mean, like a miss for us, but we're not running out to buy $1,700 G-Shocks, I guess.
Let's roll into this week in watches for all your news stories from the world of horology this week. Let's start it up with a bit of a somber one, but we talked about it a couple of episodes ago now, and this was the case of Stephen McMille, who refused to hand over his Rolex Submariner watch and was killed by 4 attackers. One of them was called Lewis Peake, and he'd been drinking with Mr. McMille earlier in the day. Manchester Crown Court convicted. Peake was 29, Michael Wilson was 20, and then 2 teenagers, 14 and 17, who robbed Stephen McMiler. At least they've convicted them, but just shocking, really, to be killed for a Rolex. And I hate to say, unfortunately, that is one of the big things that I guess in the US is not, you can't really get your heads around, and that's the British justice system. Because if you're convicted of manslaughter in the UK, they're not going to be sent down they should be sent down for a long time, but they likely will not be sent down for a long time. It's not like in the US where if you're convicted of murder, they can put you away for 100 years or something like that.
Like first degree. First degree would be like premeditated. First degree in some states could be a life sentence, but yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm guessing that the teenagers, especially 14 and 17, will probably not see that much time. The judge said that he appreciated they probably didn't mean to kill him, but that didn't stop the violence. Very sad story, and obviously,
some justice. I mean, these folks were caught, and they were brought to justice. Whatever, I mean, you can argue whether it was the right amount, but certainly a better outcome than not finding who did it and never seeing any justice for these guys. So certainly somewhat positive, but yeah, a whole sort of somber take on wearing luxury wristwatches.
Yeah, and obviously thoughts go out to Mr. McMiler's family, and it lays a lot of weight to the work that Paul Thorpe's been doing about getting Rolex to put in their lost and stolen register, because this watch has never been found.
Right.
It's the judge in the ruling encouraged all jewelers to double check, but if you haven't got that lost and found register, then you're relying on people either reporting it to their local police station, but if it's sent abroad, there is certain websites, and I've used them in the past, where you can go on and independently register a watch of any brand on their websites. In fact, I'll throw a picture up here of the one that I've used, because there's been a couple of times I've bought watches on eBay, most recently that Breitling, and I've just checked to make sure it hadn't been registered stolen before.
That's a good check for if you're purchasing something used. You just some check that you can at least do a little bit of diligence there to say, like, if this has just shown up, or if it's an amazing price, it's too good to be true.
Next story is Richard Mille is releasing a $1 million automatic tourbillon McLaren Speedtail special edition. Totally out of my price range, but what caught my eye about this is not only is it a beautiful looking watch and a feat of engineering, but my angle on this was I've been watching a lot of Roman from the Grey Market channel, the guys over at the Timepiece Gentlemen, Anthony and Marco. They talk as much about trading Rolex as they do about Richard Mille. Apparently Richard Mille is hotter than Rolex to trade. They only make 3,000 a year, and it seems like this is, if you can play, this is the game that you play when you get bored of trading high-end Rolex, I think, because they're trading for many multiples over their retail price. What do you think of this one, Kris?
Oh, McLaren. Oh, Richard Mille. I mean, I think, well, I just looked. A 2020 720S McLaren is only starting at $300,000. So for 3 McLaren 720Ss, well appointed, you could have the Richard Mille Automatic Tourbillon. How many of the Tourbillon are they going to make? Is it going to be some sort of limited there too?
Yeah, it's a beautiful car, isn't it? And I've seen plenty of these both in Florida and in California, and the P1 as well.
Yeah. I mean, they've got the 570S will go for about $195,000, for like a couple, a house in Florida. Well, maybe not a house in Florida, but but I mean, interesting that there is, I mean, what surprises me when I hear stuff like this is it sort of calibrates my thinking of the economy and what is luxury and what is rich and what is wealthy. And so you really have to consider that if they are making enough if they're selling enough $1 million automatic tourbillons to sell all of them. I mean, I don't know if you'd ever. I mean, it seems like they're going out of the going off the shelves and they're being traded, etc. I guess my concept of wealthy is out of whack because I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine spending $80,000 on a wristwatch, let alone $1 million.
Yeah, I'm the same. But again, I guess when you have that much money and the money itself is not necessarily the object, it's having something that's unique and having something that's individual, then I can see it at that level. Although I'm similar to you, even if I was very wealthy, I'm not sure whether I would put that much into a watch simply because I would be worried about losing it. But it sounds like it's a great investment.
Selling them out. Yeah, exactly. It's and interesting. And it feels like they are, especially, we talked about them being involved in F1.
Yeah.
It feels like that's the sort of where the new money, like, if you want to identify that you have made it and that you are ultra wealthy, successful, then the Richard Mille on the wrist is key, because I don't think a Daytona is cutting it. I don't think anything from Rolex is there's like, you've made it, and then there's like uber rich.
Let's dive into our next story, and this was my cheekily titled "Own a Picasso for $18,000." Pablo Picasso's wristwatch is coming up for auction, and its estimate is only 12,000 to 18,000 euros. So this is a story from Watch Pro. Apparently, he had quite the watch collection, according to Watch Pro here. He had Jaeger LeCoultre and a few other watches, but this was the one that he wore the most. And it was a manual wind steel piece known by a Swiss watch producer, Michael Z. Berger. It made around 1960. So apparently this was the one that he wore when he was painting, because obviously he didn't want to mess up the other ones. But if you look at the dial, what I thought was pretty interesting was it's got Pablo Picasso, fits perfectly around the dial there.
Did it, yeah.
And you can tell it's lived a life, this watch, for sure, haven't you? Look how beaten up that is. So I'll be really interested. But what I thought was a bit clickbaity of Watch Pro, it looks like 100. Your eye immediately draws to 130 million, but when you read it, it was actually for one of his recent paintings. It isn't for this watch, because I was like, 130 million for that watch. 103 million, sorry.
From my standpoint, like, how much would one of his brushes, his paint kit, or, like I said, the wristwatch that he wore when he painted most of his stuff, I think that's undervalued. I mean, just thinking, like, if someone said to me, how much do you think that would go through? I agree with you. Like, maybe we'll see that rise up.
Ones that I find are interesting are, occasionally I'll go on the movie prop stores, and you do find prop watches. I know the one that Brad Pitt wore in Fury, which had a Steve-O straps on it, and Steve-O straps was that strap maker who made me that Land Rover strap. He made for that production. And that didn't go for a lot. That went for maybe $1,000 or something. And I've seen other watches on there. A lot of times they're replica watches, movie watches of big other brands like Rolex, obviously, example. And sometimes they haven't got the inner workings of them.
Even to say, like, this is the watch Brad Pitt wore in this movie. Like, that's just, I don't know, but that seems to me to be a connection there, even if it's not functional, but like, just that I think there's a greater connection there if you're a fan.
Next story. How do you feel about these collabs? Because Steve Aoki, who I once saw in Ibiza, actually, great, really good DJ, he's got this new collab that he's done with Bulgari. So it's an ETA-based B77. It's got his iconic logo on the dial. It seems It seems a weird collab because I'm sure he's done one with G-Shock before, or maybe I'm just imagining that he probably should have done one with G-Shock, because you imagine DJs doing collabs with G-Shocks or those type of brands. But what do you think about DJs doing sort of more higher end? Because I'd argue Bulgari is more higher end than
Yeah, sir. Yeah, I think so.
G-Shock.
I like it. I like the idea. I think it's cool because I feel like with the with these it's a little more substantial. I don't know how I want to say this. But like I feel like if you're going to rep a product, it's okay to move into like this higher price point. Maybe I'm not saying that right, but
no, I know what you mean. It's as well as I think DJs themselves have gone more upmarket. Certainly, they went more high end, didn't they? Not high end, but they went more. Became a lot more fashionable. The idea of these superstar DJs. So it does make sense, and they've loosely tied in the watch by saying, well, it's club ready with a glow in the dark dial, yeah, and it got the rubber strap because that's easier when you're DJing, and all of these sort of like tenuous little links that they put in there. But overall, it's a good looking watch. I think it's
I think it's a good tie-in. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this. Again, if you're a fan.
I don't know why this show I've turned it into a bit of like an artsy one. We have Pablo Picasso in there, and there was a local art festival where I moved to in Florida. A place called Winter Park has a local art festival, and what I was surprised to see, and I've shared it on my Instagram, please follow me over on Casual Watch Reviews on Instagram, and Kris's is Everyday Mastery on Instagram. But what was really cool, even though it was an art festival, well, I'll show you two Instagram photos. First of all, this dog totally took me by surprise. Have you seen this painting of the dog?
Yeah, the little watch clock faces. It's cute.
Yeah, it was amazing. But what I wanted to talk about was Oris have this awesome Airstream that it must be their sort of show piece that they carry around the country, but it was a really cool Airstream. They fitted out with all the Oris logos, and they had all of the watches in there. So they had the Oris Bear at the start. I got to see that fantastic Oris Aquis with the new 400 caliber 400, I think it's called, movement, and I tried to get a picture of where it looked like the bear on the back, but it was a really cool thing to see. They had all of the watches in there. There was quite a few people crammed in this Airstream, so I couldn't get a good shot of everything. Just to see all of the Oris watches in there, the sales chap that was in there, very, very knowledgeable about Oris. I can't really imagine outside of Baselworld or any of those that you would see any other. The store that it's opposite, which is Orlando Watch Company, which is where I bought my X33 from, they are big stockists of Bell & Ross, of Seiko. In fact, they've got quite a lot of shop space dedicated to Seiko. But you couldn't imagine like Seiko doing something like that with a cool.
Yeah. No, that's super cool marketing, and it feels it feels almost grassroots, that it's just,
yes.
We're out and, what's going on in here kind of thing, and drawing some interest in and getting people. I think it's a much more comfortable setting versus, walking into a high-end luxury watch shop. I think that removes that barrier because they show up and they're like, hey, come on into our tiny Airstream. I hope you're vaccinated.
For our next story, and this really isn't a story, this is something that I've noticed a lot on YouTube. I'm not picking particularly on Jenna Ellie here. I think she makes some fantastic content. But what I think is concerning, or is YouTube videos, and you see a lot of them, it's not just Jenna Ellie that does them. I've done one, admittedly, on a fake Seiko. But you're seeing a lot more now, especially there's one Seamaster, Polar Seamaster that's doing the rounds, is these Watchfinder does it, Bark and Jack's done it, Jody at Just One More Watch has done these, where they're taking these super clones of watches and then comparing them to the real thing, and inevitably inevitably there's some clickbait title like how
you
realistic.
won't believe, yeah,
you won't believe how amazing this super fake is, and I was totally fooled by this. And I get, on one hand, I get that it's interesting because it might stop somebody or it might save somebody from buying one of these super clones, and it is interesting. But I don't know what you think, Kris. Maybe I'm getting the wrong end of the stick here, but I can't help but think as many people as it helps not get screwed over, there must be equal amount of people that are like, oh my God, I could totally get away with buying one of these.
Yes. Yeah. So my take is that I think maybe a year and a half ago, we had a rush of these. It was like one of the, it was either like the Hulk or something. It was like the Green Hulk or something that like 3 watch reviewers had. And it was like, it's a super clone. I went to see how much the fakes cost and if I could get one. Now, I went to see for research purposes only, but I will say in the back of my mind, I was like, I had that, you had that thing. I mean, you can't help but think like, well, geez, I mean, if you could just pull this off for like $500, you're like it makes you think that. So like, it really feels like a disservice. And then I don't know. I also feel like it's not the same one. Like sometimes you'll see like there's been a batch of like Rolex, or there's the different ones, the Omega. I feel like there's a group of folks going out and getting these super fakes that are like fueling the industry.
Watchfinder, I am sure that they get, people are trying to trade them all the time. So the ones they get are likely ones that people have sent in as a. But apparently, I was listening to Jody on Scottish Watches podcast, and he'd done the Seamaster one, and apparently he was saying the Seamaster is so accurate that they've even laser engraved the dial. There's a whole separate talk track round here of, hey, if a super clone can be made so exactly down to the point where the Seamaster, as soon as you look at the movement, it's not going to be a coaxial movement, but maybe some of the Rolexes and stuff, there is an argument there that is, well, if a super clone can be made so like them, then what am I paying for? Well, you're paying for the history and the romance. You can fake the watch, but you can't fake the history. And it's what I think it really I always think about this along terms of the British press is really bad for doing this, where it's like, oh, we smuggled a knife onto a plane and this is what happened. And you're like, well, why don't you just write the flipping manual for everybody? Now, people weren't even thinking of putting a knife in the bottom of a shoe. And now you've got like 10 reporters going on planes with knives made out of nylon.
The exposure that it gives to that industry, I feel is just such a disservice. On some level, yes, we have to have the conversation that's like, listen, if a clone of this with all the similar stuff and it's gotten to the point where you can't tell the difference, it's accurate, it's just as accurate, it's just as the quality, et cetera, then yes, I guess we have to have that conversation of like, is it worth the sum of its parts? But it has to be a conversation, right, based on what you said, which was like the brand, the heritage, like that, the fact that all those brands are defending their copyrights and their image, right? That takes money, that takes work, that takes time. And to have someone just go in and clone this thing and be like, oh, well, we didn't have to spend any money in R&D because we just made a copy of it. And you're like, so that conversation has to happen, but like to go and find the actual watch, and I see them all the time, and I think like, I feel like the watch YouTubers are buying about, I don't know, maybe about $7,000 worth of fake watches a year.
The watch YouTubers are keeping Pagani alive as well. They're buying those Pagani clones that, except for having Pagani on the name, they're almost identical. They're keeping that industry alive. They're inadvertently promoting it, but also as well, you've got to think about, if you buy one of these super clones, you might be like, oh, I've got away with it. But what happens to that? Inevitably, you're going to get bored of that watch because it doesn't have the romance and the history. When you're watching that James Bond film and you see that watch, you can't be thinking, oh, I own that. I own a piece of that legacy of that company. And then you get bored of it and then you try and flog it. What happens if somebody then, you might sell it as a super clone, but what happens if then somebody else fools that this Daytona that Jenny Ellie had, that's a $30,000 watch on current market value. If you gave away a super clone that you spent $1,000 on and you're just like, oh, I sold it as a super clone, I'm guilt-free.
Because that watch is going to go on to, like, could go on to someone unsuspecting. It opens the door for unscrupulous. That's just, it's like having, have you seen on eBay, you can buy the, of course we're doing it right now. This is us doing it right now.
We're doing a promotion now.
You can buy the movie money.
Yes.
Okay. And now in the past, I do not advocate this, but in the past, some of that movie money is pretty good. Yeah. And it's like having $100 bill stack of movie money that you sell to someone, and then you think like, this is pretty good. And that stuff shows up in sheriff's departments and police departments all the time. And people just accept it and they don't look at it. And it says for motion picture use only on the top of it. And people just take it. If you go and consciously say, I'm going to try to give this to you for commerce, that is a crime. Just like as if you take a super fake that you know it is and you try to sell it to someone, that is a crime. But if that money didn't exist, and if that super accurate money didn't exist and that super accurate watch didn't exist, you know, you don't have that. You don't have that opportunity. And I think every time that stuff is out in the market, there's like 10%, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are honest, 90, let's say 90% of people are honest, but there's 10% that's going to take that watch and then try to get $25,000 for it.
Well, that horology house scandal all over again. I mean, I bought the fake Seiko turtle, but because I wanted to show people that not that it was a good fake at all and that they could totally get away with it, that Wish was showing. Wish might not have, it was a seller on Wish. Wish weren't directly responsible, but
like Amazon is now being held responsible for their fake goods, for their counterfeit goods. eBay is being held responsible for their counterfeit goods, as they should be.
And that watch is going to get destroyed. Like, yeah, we're going to destroy it. The timepiece gentlemen, whenever they get sent fake watches, they take it to the shooting range. But I mean, it's a never ending. I mean,
that's a good caveat to the end of this story, which is, dear watch YouTubers, we're totally fine with you showing us a super fake, but in the same video, you have to destroy it. We want to see it in little metal bits, ground down and squashed to infinity.
But yeah, but you're still missing that. I mean, that fake turtle that I did, and I'll never do one of these again, guys. You can hold me to it. I'll never do one of these videos. But that, you're still promoting how good a clone it is. You're still promoting. I mean, and they're doing. I mean, Generelli's, she's great at what she does. Those macro shots. I mean, it's clear. I mean, you'd really, really have to know what you were doing not this Daytona that she had, not to know it. The casual observer, there's no chance that you're
exactly. Yeah, no, and I think it's just a gut human reaction. I see these, and I'm a watch guy, and I know better, and I'm like, which ones are they knocking out? And also to inform myself on particular watches to watch out for. So like if I was going to get like the Bell and Ross, like the BR03s, they clone those things. I mean, you know, there are certain models that they stick to that they know that they can make, you know, clones of and that will pass muster. So it's good to, you know, was from that standpoint, but then again, and then next thing you know, I'm on this like illicit site via a VPN trying to hide, you know, and then I'm like, but I only have to send, you know, how much PayPal to this one guy, and then I can, and you're like, no, don't
the devil
don't do
on
that.
your shoulder.
Yep, exactly. Don't do it, and don't promote. And yeah, hey, hey, watch YouTubers, maybe stop promoting them.
Yeah, and there's a whole different argument about, well, are luxury watches too expensive and blah, blah, blah. But they are expensive. It's an expensive hobby. Chris and I don't own 10 Rolexes. We're not trying to be and how do we get around this? Well, I think we discussed it, didn't we, using non-fungible tokens, trying to use like blockchain because that's something that can never be faked, because otherwise somebody would be siphoning off Bitcoin like it was going out of fashion.
You wouldn't start with a watch. You'd start with something big. Exactly.
Yeah. You'd want to put some kind of, maybe it's a chip inside the watch or a non-fungible token. But anyway, it was just one of those things I'd noticed on YouTube. But let us know what you guys think about it, because I'm really interested. Are we totally on the wrong end of the conversation here, Chris and I? Let us know over on the Facebook group. As always, guys, we really appreciate you watching and listening, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk. Thanks, guys. Bye.